Hello and welcome back. So far, we have tried to capture the essence of an action by understanding weight, understanding how the shoulder and the hip are arranged with respect to each other, and then obviously acting it out, feeling it, feeling where the tension is, how things are getting stretched, squashed, and how things are flowing into each other to capture what we called the gesture. Then in the next video, we kind of simplified, we figured out simplified forms. Yeah, we figured out simplified forms to represent those parts, like individual parts, so that when we combine them together, we come close to the idea of the human form. And if you notice, I'm always keeping these, there is this sort of a, it goes in, it goes out, that's how. And that is why when I was asking you to do the gestures, I was asking you to specifically focus on CNS curves. Like if this dude had to bend forward, there will be a C, but at the same time there will be an S here in the legs. And can you see how, in order to balance, okay, I might have gone a little too far, not in terms of the S, but in terms of, yeah. But can you see this angle is going this way? It's just because the whole weight was coming in front. So I had to balance it by, and you will see that your body weight in itself will make you balance things. Like your body will make you balance the weight. Sorry about, I get caught up in words. Sorry. And this is one of the reasons why I asked you to get into the feeling of it, because there is only a limited amount of drawings I can do, ideas I can share this way. Now I came to this idea and I immediately shared with you the fact that, see, they are bent, they're tilted. uh, the other way could have been where I would have bent them. Maybe they could have gone a little forward, and people who can't really, touch their, what do you call, toes, people like me who are incredibly inflexible, they have to balance their weight by bending and put an awful amount of weight on the, sometimes they even have to get on the toes to, yeah. So the idea that I wanted to communicate was, you'll have to feel it out. And the more you feel it out, the more all these case scenarios will become irrelevant, because you're just, as I said, you will be putting the limbs to balance things, right? The moment you act it out and feel that you're falling over, and this is what you like, you need to put your legs in a certain way to balance the pose. The moment you will start drawing it that way. If I put this foot ahead, I'll have to figure out a way to put another foot behind, just because the pose needs to be balanced. So that's it. Anyway, coming back to this idea, uh, so now that we have these basic shapes and we know how they work in space, right? We have more or less an information on how these look from the top, how these look from the bottom. how they look from the back. The front, as we already know. So even though they're simpler forms and we can more or less rotate and see, but there is one thing that always comes as a hindrance in drawing it correctly. Let me try and explain that through a cube. Now, our perception says that this is a cube. Our perception also says this is not a cube. And yes, when I'm sharing these ideas, I am kind of not ignoring, but I'm taking for granted that the lens that I'm using is the the lens that replicates the eye, which is say in the 35 range, you know. And if you go use a fatter lens or a wider lens or a then these things could, like this cube could look really skewed. Yeah, if this lens is really thin like a telephoto, then there might not be any kind of what do you call, like the vanishing points will go to infinity, so they will basically look a lot like this, where each is parallel to the other. I mean, yeah, this is the way to show parallel in geometry. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah, you get the idea, right? Now, but let's come back to the human eye, which is in the 35 range. I'm not exactly sure what lens do we have, but it's in the 35 range. And that's one of the reasons why when you shoot with a 35 range, it's closer to what we observe, 35 to 55 range. Uh, so the proportional look okay. Anyway, coming back to this. So from this point of view, we know that this is not a cube. This is more of a cuboid, which is elongated. And while we have clarity that this is not a cube, we are not completely certain, but this does come close to looking like a cube, right? Do you, maybe we'll go back to, we'll avoid the lensing bit and come back to something which is like a, yeah. So this comes close to, but there is an entire gray area between these two, which is which is this? Is this a cube? Or this might be pushing it a little far, but you know what I mean. There is no exactness to it. And that's one of the reasons why while we more or less know, we don't always completely know unless we measure it. And that's the same with the human body as well, the challenge of drawing the human body.